Good. Wow.
How'd you get here?
Here's a quote from his book, The Gay Science. Behind the highest value judgments that have hitherto guided the history of thought, there are concealed misunderstandings of the physical constitution, of individuals or classes, or even whole races. All those bold insanities of metaphysics, especially answers to the question about the value of existence, may always be considered, first of all, as the symptoms of certain bodies.
Let's do it. I didn't look up the second quote, and we're gonna... Oh my god, my search function's completely fucking broken right now. This book may need more than one preface. In the end, there will still remain room for doubt whether anyone who had ever lived through similar experiences could be brought closer to the experience of this book by means of prefaces. It seems to be written in the language of the wind that thaws ice and snow. High spirits, unrest, contradiction, and April weather are present in it. One is instantly reminded no less of the proximity of winter than the triumph over the winter that is coming, must come, and perhaps has already come. So good. Fuck, I like his writing. We're going to start there. You see that I do not want to take leave ungratefully from the time... Sorry. From the time of severe sickness, whose profits I have not yet exhausted even today. I am very conscious of the advantages that my fickle health gives me over all robust squares. A philosopher who has traversed many kinds of health and keeps traversing them has passed through an equal number of philosophies. He simply cannot keep from transposing his states every time into the most spiritual form and distance. This art of transfiguration is philosophy. We philosophers are not free to divide body from soul as the people do. We are even less free to divide soul from spirit. We are not thinking frogs, nor objectifying and registering mechanisms with their innards removed. Constantly, we have to give birth to our thoughts out of our pain and, like mothers, endow them with all we have of blood, heart, fire, pleasure, passion, agony, conscience, fate, and catastrophe. Life, that means for us constantly transforming all that we are into light and flame, also everything that wounds us. We simply can do no other, and as for sickness, are we not almost tempted to ask whether we could get along without it? Only great pain is the ultimate liberator of the spirit, being the teacher of the great suspicion that turns every you into an X, a real, genuine X. That is the letter before the penultimate one. It's a German expression, just to read it, for deceiving someone that means literally passing off a U as an X. Originally, it referred to the Roman numerals V and X, which meant passing off a fiver for a tenner, right? The suspicion of which Nietzsche speaks does not inflate conventional values. It insists that they are not really known, but rather unknown quantities, the X of mathematics. That's the line there. It's a fucking really clever line. Only great pain is the ultimate liberator of the spirit, being the teacher of the great suspicion that turns every you into an X, a real, genuine X, that is the letter before the penultimate one. Only great pain, the long, slow pain that takes its time, on which we are burned, as it were, with green wood, compels us philosophers to descend into our ultimate depths, and to put aside all trust, everything good-natured, everything that would interpose a veil that is mild, that is medium, things in which, formerly, we may have found our humanity. I doubt that such pain makes us better, but I know that it makes us more profound. Whether we learn to pit our pride, our scorn, our willpower against it, equaling the American Indian who, however tortured, repays his torturer with the malice of his tongue, or whether we withdraw from pain into that oriental nothing called nirvana, into rigid, mute, deaf resignation, self-forgetting, self-extinction. Out of such long and dangerous exercises of self-mastery, one emerges as a different person, with a few more question marks. Above all, with the will, henceforth, to question further, more deeply, severely, harshly, evilly, and quietly than one had questioned before. The trust in life is gone. Life itself has become a problem. Yet one should not jump to conclusions that this necessarily makes one gloomy. Even love of life is still possible, and one loves differently. It is the love for a woman that causes doubts in us. This attraction of everything problematic, the delight of an X, however, is so great that such a more spiritualized man in this delight flares up again and again like the bright blaze over all distress of what is problematic, over all danger and uncertainty, over the danger of even the jealousy of a lover. We know a new happiness. Oh God, sorry. I got taken away by that one. It's fucking amazing. I find Nietzsche fucking amazing. This is the context. So let's read it. But let us leave Herr Nietzsche. What is it to us that Herr Nietzsche has become well again? For a psychologist, there are a few questions that are as attractive as that concerning the relation of health and philosophy. And if he should himself become ill, he will bring all of his scientific curiosity into illness. For assuming that one is a person, one necessarily also has the philosophy that belongs to that person, but there is a big difference. In some, it is their deprivations that philosophize, in others, their riches and strengths. The former need their philosophy, whether it be as prop, sedative, medicine, redemption, elevation, or self-alienation. For the latter, it is merely a beautiful luxury. In the best cases, the voluptuousness of a triumphant gratitude that eventually still has to inscribe itself in the cosmic letters on the heaven of concepts. But in the former case, which is more common, when it is distress that philosophizes, as is the case with all sick thinkers, and perhaps sick thinkers are more numerous in the history of philosophy, what will become of the thought itself when it is subjected to the pressure of sickness? This is the question that concerns the psychologist, and here an experiment is possible, just as a traveler may resolve, before he calmly abandons himself to sleep, to wake up at a certain time. We philosophers, if we should become sick, surrender for a while to sickness, body and soul, and, as it were, shut our eyes to ourselves. And as the traveler knows that something is not asleep, that something counts the hours and will wake him up, we too know that the decisive moment will find us awake, and that something will leap forward then and catch the spirit in the act. I mean, in its weakness, or repentance, or resignation, or hardening, or gloom, and whatever other names there are for the pathological state of the spirit, that the healthy days are opposed by the pride of the spirit. For the old saying is still valid: the proud spirit, peacock, and horse are the three proudest beasts on earth. After such self-questioning, self-temptation, one acquires a subtler eye for all philosophizing to date. One can infer better than before the involuntary detours, side lanes, resting places, and sunny places of thought to which suffering thinkers are led and misled on account of their suffering, for now one knows whether the sick body and its needs unconsciously urge, push, and lure the spirit toward the sun, stillness, mildness, patience, medicine, balm in some sense. Every philosophy that ranks peace above war, every ethic with a negative definition of happiness, every metaphysics and physics that knows some finale, some final state of some sort, every predominantly aesthetic or religious craving for some apart, beyond, outside, above, permits the question whether it was not sickness that inspired the philosopher. The unconscious disguise of physiological needs under the cloak of the objective, ideal, purely spiritual, goes to frightening lengths. And often I have asked myself whether, taking a large view, philosophy has not been merely an interpretation of the body and a misunderstanding of the body. Behind the highest value judgments that have hitherto guided the history of thought, there are concealed misunderstandings of the physical constitution of individuals or classes or whole races. All those bold insanities of metaphysics, especially answers to the question about the value of existence, may always be considered first of all as a symptom of certain bodies. And if such world affirmations or world negations lack any grain of significance when measured scientifically, they are the more valuable for the historian and psychologist as hints or symptoms of the body, of its success or failure, its plenitude, power, and autocracy in history, or of its frustrations, weariness, impoverishment, its premonitions of end, its will to the end. I am still waiting for a philosophical physician, in the exceptional sense of the word, one who has to pursue the problem of the total health of a people, time, race, or of humanity, to muster the courage to push my suspicion to its limits and to risk the proposition. What was at stake in all philosophizing hitherto was not at all truth, but something else. Let us say health, future growth, power, and life. Why do I read the whole thing? 1, that's how he wrote it. 1. 2, when you read the whole thing, you realize he's not saying at all that certain bodies are better at this than others. He's saying, and it's a fucking good goddamn statement. It's a brilliant fucking way to put it. The first thing we need to understand when people do separate themselves by class, by race, by kind, by style, by sexuality, by gender, is not from a healthy position, but instead from one of sickness. We need to understand the bodies that create and produce these systemic inequalities. He's saying that the sickness causes those. He's fairly explicit in how he's saying it too. Behind the highest value, and taking it out of context, by the way, PhilosophyTube, fuck you too. Behind the highest value judgments that have hitherto guided the history of thought. This is the highest value judgments he's not happy with. It doesn't mean the good ones. There are concealed misunderstandings of the physical constitution of individuals or classes or even races. All of those, blah, 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 blah. And if such world affirmations and world negations to court lack any grain of significance when measured scientifically, they are more valuable for the historian. This is the point that, hey, the stereotype shows up that says X, Y, or Z about this race. If it's not true, that's more interesting. That's his point. It's more interesting that it's like, hey, wait. Okay. We can do this real quick. There's a myth. There's a myth that black people are better at sports. It's a myth. It's a myth. It's bullshit. There is some general structure in a handful of maybe genetic sequences, but maybe not. And also it's not really about genetics. That's not really how humans work. It's a myth. But it's a believed truth. When we find out it's not true, that's more interesting to Nietzsche. And it should be, because if I were to say, hey, by the way, black people, they tend to have darker skin. That's not interesting. It's not. It's just not interesting because it's true. I'm pretty sure I can scientifically prove that, but we can go through that. Black people are better at all sports. They move faster. They have larger buttocks or penises. All these things and bullshit. When you actually, it's like, actually, this is not true. Wait. That makes it more interesting, Nietzsche's saying, because the whole point is measuring it that way and understand. He's talking about sickness of the mind, by the way. He's talking about the belief in irrational things. He's talking about himself coming out of that, and that it's more interesting to have these stereotypes be believed, because then we can actually talk about a people. And he's right. It's like insanely woke. That's the definition of fucking wokeness, is that sentence that this fucking moron who doesn't fucking read anything, doesn't read books, is reading as a gross fucking sentiment from Nietzsche. She's saying it's a gross sentiment. Thank you. It's a lovely, it's a with a little bit of a shiny oil thing. This is not a comment that would be underneath Dead or Alive Extreme Volleyball unless you edit it this way. Behind the highest value judgments that have hitherto guided the history of thought, there are concealed misunderstandings of the physical constitution of individuals or classes or whole races. All of those bold insanities of metaphysics, especially answers to the question about the value of existence, may always be considered first of all as the symptom of certain bodies. Yeah. Let me say this another way. I'm going to give a very particular example. Today, our country, America, I'm an American, but we can say the Western world in general, and I would say the East. I could say the entire world. The entire world is suffering from a sickness. PTSD. World War II killed more people than we can actually understand today. Like, we can give you numbers, but we cannot grasp how many actual people were killed in terms of the actual lived realities of the people who were alive at the time. It's a percentage of the population just brutally murdered. And in every way, from China to the Holocaust, to German lives, to British lives, to French lives, to Russian lives, to like every group of people. Africa was a front of this. There was brutality everywhere. And if you weren't in it, which most people were, you were affected by it by family or you were fighting. And PTSD is a real fucking thing. The world we live in, the bold insanities of metaphysics, especially answers to the questions about the values of existence, should be considered first of all as symptoms of certain bodies. The morality that came out of World War II, that the greatest generation instilled in the boomer generation, the total misunderstanding of their own pain and the unwillingness of them to actually get help. Most of them drank, beat the shit out of their kids, didn't discuss pain, didn't know how to do that. That sickness was transferred to their children. The bodies were ill. This is what he's saying. He's saying all the fucked up stuff should first not be considered, oh, I guess people are confused. No. We need to look at the health of the people. And he means it in the mental health too. We can look at all of these things. It's a brilliant fucking section. To turn it that it's a race purity thing is so fucking gross. Isn't there something suspicious about him using the term health as a foundational philosophical category? It's too vague, too slippery, and can hide. Sure, it can hide lies when you cut out a paragraph. He opens, again, to just say how he opens that specific paragraph, that section. For a psychologist, that's how it opens. What health do you think he's going to talk about in those 3 paragraphs that start with, for a psychologist? That's what he's doing. He's talking about mental health. But it's not mental health. This is also how we get fucked up in the West. When I say mental health, you think, oh, it's fucked up how I think. No, it's a fucking brain problem. Brain is physical. The physicality of all of this is what he's talking about. It's physical health. There's no difference there. That break is, again, another thing that Nietzsche literally comes out against. He comes out against that multiple times. It's one of the dichotomies that Christ and God left us with when he fucking died. It's just so awful that this is so fucking not only out of context, but the opposite of what he's saying. And to turn it into this way, it just shows how, 1, absolutely bad faith Abigail Thorne is at this. 2, never actually read The Gay Science, period. Just fucking searched for race or anything else, or some asshole put it in a book and said, look at how problematic this is, and went, oh my God, look at what they're saying about race, without understanding the entire thing. It's why you have to read the section. It's 4 paragraphs. It's a lot of reading for some people. I understand that, but you can do that as a thing. It's so gross. This is the opposite of what Nietzsche, but again, as I like to say, shit like this is a fucking self-report. Because if that's how you read this, you don't go, huh, and you think through it, and you go immediately, yep, race, self-report. Gay Science is a great one. If you want to start with Nietzsche, genuinely, just pick a book up. Pick a book and read. Just pick up a book. Do something. Don't wait for the right book. Pick up a book. They're all fine. Books are good. Read them. All right. Oh, good. We're 18 minutes in. It's taken me 3.5 hours. Holy shit. Fuck. God, it's 11:15.
Especially answers to the question about the value of existence may always be considered, first of all, as the symptoms of certain bodies. So here, Nietzsche is saying that your values, the things that we are supposed to transform, comes down to what race you are, which
No.
he thinks is a biological category. It follows then that
No, it doesn't. You fucking moron. None of that is accurate, and it's a shit reading, and it's the opposite of what he's saying. It's the opposite of what he's saying. You're terrible at your job. You shouldn't be allowed to tell people about philosophy. Get back to the other stuff. You do a better job with it. Go pretend like you can act. God. It's just, I just went through it. Everyone should be aware that this is not what he's saying. If you're watching this and you saw me just read through it and this is your take still, let me know. I'll happily build it out.
your values, the things that we are supposed to transform.
Ninja, do you need to leave a comment? I'm not going to leave a comment. Commenting is the intention of resentment. The internet is built as a machine for feeding on that. I get to leave a comment so that I can pretend someone will read it and that I've said something out into the void. But the shitstorm doesn't care about anything I have to say. You people do. So I'm making a video so that way maybe you people will then read better. And if I can make one of you read Nietzsche slightly better or introduce you to that instead of this fucking hot mess garbage, I consider life a better place.
Comes down to what race you are, which he thinks is a biological category.
He doesn't, and that's not a thing he would have ever said. Biological category is not a thing to him. It's not, it's a biological category instead of, like, no. Like,
it follows then that if you are a white Aryan, then you can value good things and you can transform yourself, whereas...
Okay, if I say that white people have dominated cultures throughout society, do you think I'm saying only white people can do that?
If you are pretty much anybody else, especially Jewish, then you are essentially morally, spiritually...
He literally, like, he almost goes too far, and sometimes does, in making the Jewish people an idealized minority group. It's quite the opposite. He certainly doesn't say that the Jews are diseased biologically. Jesus Christ. Toaster Cleaner, wait, isn't it the stuff that Nietzsche's sister sold to the Nazis is like the base of their Aryan race bullcrap? Literally, she's regurgitating Nazi talking points. You're not tripping? Like, here's the thing. The difficulty with the Nazis is that they were liars and they didn't care about anything except for, like, doing meth and having their own beliefs validated. So she brought up earlier this terrible book by a French guy that, like, said that, like, the Aryans were actually Indian, Hindu, it doesn't matter. The Nazis put everything in there. Like, if you watch if you play Wolfenstein, this is like my favorite, the Wolfenstein and Indiana Jones and all that occult shit, the Nazis did that shit. They didn't go, everything pointed to them being true because that's how fascism works. Everything is about them needing to overcome and defeat their enemies, that everyone wants to destroy them. Everyone's, right now, as an example of it in America, somehow Trump's press secretary is having to continually make the talking point that they're not in charge. I'm serious. Go watch the fucking press events. You can see this happening on TV, that it's somehow like it's the media or the bureaucratic, like they own all three houses, all three forms of government, all three divisions of government. They have the fourth estate locked the fuck down, to say the fucking least. They have all of the billionaires on their side. And somehow they're not in charge. They have to keep that. And everything they do will continue that. This is how fascists work. And stupid people like Abigail Thorne apparently, believe it. That oh well, this is just all, you know, the things that they believe, instead of that it's part of the problematic mental health and the way that society's producing people. It's always everyone else. It's always everyone else. And again, I'll never forgive the deep state thing going over to the right. Pisses me off so bad. That's an old lefty talking point. That's a long-standing one. The permanent state that has basically been the reason that the CIA has overthrown so many countries and killed so many leftists and destroyed communist nations and uprisings and worked with just insanely awful, evil people. That's the permanent state. Somehow they got that. It's like, pisses me off.
And biologically diseased. Again, it's
Nah, that's not.
giving Hitler.
You are actually doing that. So you've got the Hitler particles all over you. You're doing that.
It's giving Hitler. And also, not that this is the worst
Read Nietzsche, moron.
part of
God.
this by any means, but it's also pretty hypocritical. Nietzsche criticized Christianity for giving people a false story that stunts our critical development, and here he is.
Oh, boy, I wonder. It's weird. It's like Nietzsche's doing the thing he rallied against. Maybe I should read some Nietzsche to see if he's doing that. Or I should just trust random assholes who hand me pieces of paper that I just read in front of people. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Doing the exact same thing. I mean, all that stuff about magic blood and Chandala, that's all too.
Yes, it is. I wonder if we can find quotes where Nietzsche says that it's bullshit.
But, in the genealogy, Nietzsche also criticizes anti-Semites. Uh-oh! Secretly woke all along?
When someone believes that their actions define who they are in this kind of way, when someone says becoming trans or getting the surgery is how you fight the man, or that, oh, saying that anti-Semites suck makes you woke. It doesn't. Israel says anti-Semites suck. I guess Abigail Thorne thinks Israel's woke. Good job. See, that's the problem. The problem with this mentality in general. It's a garbage mentality. It leads you down really, really bad roads. Because, well, anti-Semitism is bad. You must be woke, just like Israel. Donald Trump says anti-Semitism is bad. Well, doing anti-Semitisms, they suck. It's a terrible mental state.
Well, here's where we need some historical context.
You needed a lot of it before this point.
These days, anti-Semitism means anti-Jewish prejudice generally, but when Nietzsche was alive in Germany at the tail end of the 19th century, anti-Semites referred to a...
1880 is not the tail end of, like, it's really, again, just...
specific group of people. The anti-Semites, capital A, capital S. They were a political movement. They opposed equal rights for Jews, they wanted Jews to be deported, and they hated the German Liberal Party. Nietzsche did hate the anti-Semites, and he did criticize them publicly, but not because of any of that stuff. The real reason was much funnier.
Just to mention, I actually read earlier a section where he literally criticized them for that thing. So again, she's a liar and making things up and stating information she not only doesn't have, and it's fine if you don't have it, but don't state the opposite. Don't lie. That's a lie. You're lying. You're just bullshitting. You're bullshitting. It's a bullshit thing. And then secondly, to say the real reason is again lying because you don't know the real reason. Fuck off.
And much more petty. Nietzsche's publisher was part of the anti-Semite movement, and we know from his private letters that Nietzsche thought his publisher wasn't selling enough of his books because he was spending too much time on that. So.
From a letter, Nietzsche complained that his publisher wasn't working hard enough for his books. He did not say, therefore, I'm against all anti-Semites. This is, there's a Family Guy joke of the Hitler being made fun of by like a Jewish guy. And he's like, that's it. I will kill all the Jews. Like, that's not how this works. It's just like one moment. Morty, doesn't this video show you how you can be miseducated by Nietzsche? She's an example of Nietzsche's hermeneutics of suspicion run wild, where you don't really try to understand the other. I don't believe she's ever read Nietzsche. So I would say it's the way that a person can be bamboozled and ruined by internet takes and stupid people feeding them information, but not actually reading it. I don't believe you can get this take from straight up reading Nietzsche. I do not believe that's the case. I understand your point. And I think there's a danger with that with everyone. You could say the same of Marx. You could say the same of Plato, Socrates, the Stoics, even inoffensive philosophy. People can take things a billion ways. I don't care how they take them. That's not really the point. It's not really the point at all. But yeah, it's wild. Nietzsche is not the father of postmodernism. Postmodernism is the, as Frederick Jameson has described, it's the cultural state of late-stage capitalism. Postmodernism is not a philosophy.
So that's why he didn't like them. Also, Nietzsche's sister Elizabeth married a guy named Bernard Forster, who was big in the anti-Semite movement, and Nietzsche didn't
He was a Nazi.
like that Bernard was coming between him and his sister.
Nietzsche wasn't very close to his sister.
So he
She wrote about that, actually, that she wasn't as close as she could have been. And that the theory is that she rewrote a lot of stuff to be closer to him. But again, we don't know, but we do know they didn't spend a lot of time together.
criticized them for that. Elizabeth edited and published some of the books that now bear.
Again, the phrasing here. She took a lot of writings she found and collated them and edited them herself and rewrote parts to make them more clear.
Nietzsche's name. So after World War II,
Nico Mamonode, has anyone mentioned Carefree Wanderings taken over Kant video? Yes. Years ago, Sunday and I actually watched it and enjoyed his takes more. Sadly, Carefree Wandering, I think, has gone in a weird place, but she's been shit forever on philosophy. This is just a really wild one.
there was a bit of an attempt to pin the anti-Semitic stuff on her.
She was a fucking Nazi.
We're opening up a whole new frontier on the board now. Was Elizabeth woke?
No.
Elizabeth and her husband Bernard were big into the anti-Semite movement. In 1887, they moved to Paraguay to start a racially pure Aryan colony away from Jews. Bernard killed himself. Score one for the Jews, I guess.
No, that's not, again, how that works.
And after that, Elizabeth comes back to Germany to take care of her brother, who by that point had gone insane.
I hate to break it to people, but you see, when she moved to Paraguay, they didn't talk because she was in Paraguay. In 1880 to 1890, that's not the kind of time frame where you like had the internet or planes. Like, planes aren't a thing yet. Oh no, I've got a monkey. One sec, I have a monkey here.
It was a monkey.
You are a monkey. Can you say hello to everybody?
Hello.
All right.
Sitting on the desk.
You are sitting on the desk. All right. I am going to say goodnight to my little monkey, and I will be back in 2 seconds.
Heather, down here though.
I'm sure Heather knows you're down here. Do you want to just sit right there and watch me? No, I'm not going to play a game. I know you want me to, but I've got to do this. I'm talking about philosophy and books.
Overman book.
Yep. I know Dex.
Slays.
Yep.
Book.
Will to Pokemon. Well, that's just fucking adorable. I can see Will to Pokemon. I can see that. Oh, see, Pokemon meets Nietzsche philosophy. That's the thing. All right, monkey, give me a hug.
I have to.
No, you do it.
No, I don't.
I'll be right back.
It's